Welcome back to another installment of High Five. I, as always, am your host, the one, the only, the second Irish Bandit. This week we are continuing with the 5 movies you should watch before you die theme. This week we are looking at 5 action movies you should watch before you die. Or more specifically, this is more like 5 action movie franchises you should watch before you die, because I was going through my collection. And it was like, okay, yeah, this one, I might as well add the sequel. This one, add the sequel too. This one, 3 movies in that one. This one, let's add the sequels. Yeah, it became like 14 movies in this. But we're going to try to stick to the first movie. But, you know, every movie in these series you should watch if you're a big action buff like me. Because for me it's like horror, comedy, action. I love those 3 genres. And I think with this first movie we're going to be talking about, it has a little of both in, you know, with comedy and a lot of action, a lot of fun stuff. Great cast, great characters. This one is one of my favorite action movies from the 80s, starring Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, Lethal Weapon. In the first of the 4-movie franchise, we meet detectives Martin Rigg and Roger Murtaugh. 2 completely, totally different opposites end of the spectrum. You have Murtaugh, who is the family man. He's just days away from retirement. You know, he has 3 kids, a loving wife, a nice home. And then on the other side, you have strung-out lunatic Martin Riggs, who lives on the beach in a camper with his dog after his wife died, which we get a little more backstory in that in the second one. And they just mesh so well together. They just, you know, Danny Glover and Mel Gibson just meshed so well together with these 2 personalities. And it was in Lethal Weapon where we got a lot of the tropes of the buddy cop film. You had the uptight, you know, veteran of the force who just stays away from the retirement. You had the loose cannon partner. And it just worked so well in the first movie. Because as it went on, like by the 4th movie, it was kind of by that point. But I think one of my favorites was the second movie, Lethal Weapon 2, where you had the South African bad guys in it, and you have that great line by Danny Glover. You know, you had the bad guy at the end of the movie. Diplomatic immunity. It's been revoked. Poof. Cheesy, campy movies, but they're so much fun and have a lot of action to them, and they're just great movies. That, you know, all these, with the exception of maybe a couple, these are just, you know, some of these are just brainless movies that you can just get lost in. You don't need anything to. You can especially say that with the Expendables franchise. They're not on here, but you can say that with the Expendables franchise. It's just brainless. I'm gonna get into this later, another time, but I had a discussion on Facebook about this many years ago when the second movie came out. But second Expendables movie came out. But yeah, Lethal Weapon, great movie. The series, you know, kind of peaks and valleys in that, but the first one, definitely. This one I was not expecting to be a trilogy, given how great the first movie was. The second movie was okay, and the third movie was kind of iffy at points. But the first movie was just great. I love the premise of this, and it had Liam Neeson being a total badass in all 3 movies, really. And of course, Liam Neeson, 3 movies, we got to be talking about the Taken trilogy. The first Taken movie centers on Brian Mills, a former CIA operative, whose daughter is kidnapped by Armenian gangsters in Paris with her friend. And he travels to Paris to get his daughter back and ends up killing a bunch of Armenian dudes along the way. Sounds pretty basic to me, but it's done so well. And with just Liam Neeson's delivery in this, it's just chilling. He can be that total badass with that gruff Irish voice of his. And, you know, you have that great line where he's on the phone with one of the Armenian guys and he's like, "I will find you and I will kill you." Ooh, that sends chills up your spine. And then we get into the second movie where him and his wife are taken, and his daughter has to help out with finding them and getting the people who kidnapped them, who happened to be related to the Armenian guys that they killed in the first movie. And then in the third movie, it's just this weird thing with his ex-wife being murdered, him taking the blame, and her new husband, I guess. This confused me because in the first movie, her husband is played by Xander Berkeley, and then in the third movie is Doug Ray Scott. So I thought that she divorced him in the meantime and married someone new, but they were calling by the same name. They look Xander Berkeley and Doug Ray Scott look nothing alike. Like, I'm sorry, but they look nothing alike. Could you not get Xander Berkeley for this? Was he busy doing something else? I don't think so. But Taken 3, yeah, definitely was the worst of the series, but I'm a completionist, so I had to get the third movie to complete the set. I'm not sorry about it. So, Taken, the first one, was just a fantastic movie, fantastic premise, but I think it all kind of went downhill really fast. Speaking of movies going downhill pretty fast, in the third chapter of the trilogy, this is just a great 80s sci-fi action movie. It takes place in the near distant future of 1997, I do believe. I think. It says not too distant future. But I absolutely loved the first movie. I thought the second movie was fantastic, and the third movie was ludicrous. Of course, we're talking about Dead or Alive, You're Coming With Me, Robocop. In the first Robocop movie, we are introduced to the character of Alex Murphy, a Detroit City police officer who's transferred to a new unit in the most violent section of town. Along the way, he's murdered by a gang led by Red Foreman. No, seriously. That's Red Foreman as the leader of the gang. Clarence Bittaker, I think his name is. He's murdered by the gang. And under OCP orders, he is transformed into a brand new type of cop called Robocop. This movie is one of the ones that I remember from my childhood watching. Yeah, I was allowed to watch some pretty violent movies when I was a kid. And Robocop was just one of the most over-the-top ones that I've ever seen. Robocop 2 kind of continued on with that. It had a great character in that with Kane, played by Tom Noonan, if you remember him from Last Action Hero. His brain is put into a new Robocop prototype and just runs a complete muck. Robocop 2 is another one that I really remember a lot from my childhood. But I never watched Robocop 3 until I got the Robocop trilogy set. And Robocop 3 is trash. It is terrible. Like, within the first few minutes, you have a key character from the first two movies die. Even though I did come to find out that she asked to have her character killed. And Peter Weller doesn't even return as Robocop in this one. Like, okay, I understand. You can have, the big helmet and all that, and you can put anybody underneath that. But it's just not the same without Peter Weller in the role as Robocop. But Robocop and Robocop 2 were just great. Robocop 3 was trash. I think it was Paul Verhoeven who directed the first movie. Well, let me just check here. I'm pretty sure it was Paul Verhoeven who directed the first one. I love Paul Verhoeven. Hello, I'm Paul Verhoeven. There we go. Yeah, Paul Verhoeven directed the first movie. The second one was directed by Irvin Kershner. I think he wrote like one of the Star Wars movies. And then the third one was directed by Fred Decker. Terrible job. You did a terrible job directing the movie. And, with Robocop, it was funny because just so much spawned from that. You had, like, a TV show. You had action figures, which, which is kind of weird. You have an R-rated movie with action figures and a kids show. Yeah, there was a Robocop cartoon. But anyway, Robocop and Robocop 2 are two of my favorites. Two of my favorite action movies of all time. This series of movies was just... I think this is one of Quentin Tarantino's finest. And you have some great work here by Uma Thurman and just a dynamite cast, including Lucy Liu, Michael Madsen, and the late, great David Carradine as the title character of Bill. Of course, I can only be talking about Kill Bill, Volumes 1 and 2. So unlike the rest of the movies on this list, Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2 has an interconnecting story that just goes from one to the other, from Volume 1 to Volume 2. In the first Kill Bill, we're introduced to the character of the bride who seeks revenge after a wedding day massacre. Well, wasn't the wedding day, it was the rehearsal, but her former squad of assassins comes in, just completely kills everyone, leaves the pregnant bride left for dead, but she's only in a coma. She comes out of the coma, her baby's gone, so she sets out on a mission of revenge, taking out all her old colleagues along the way. You have amazing action sequences, like in Volume 1, near the end, the massacre at the tea house with the crazy 88s is just one of the most disturbingly beautiful displays I've ever seen, especially when it goes to the black and white after she rips out the one dude's eye. I can't stand shit like that. When somebody gets their eye poked out, it just creeps me out. And so it goes to black and white, and it just gets bloody, and body parts are flying, and oh wow, it was just outstanding. Because with the two movies, the first one was so action-based. You just, action, reaction, action, reaction. You know, the opening fight between her and one of her colleagues, played by Vivica A. Fox. It was just, wow. And then in the second movie, that one was more, I felt that one was more story-based. Like, you did have the big action scenes, like between the bride and Ellie Driver. The fight in Bud's trailer was just, wow. And again, ending with somebody getting their eye ripped out, which, and then she stepped on it with bare feet. Oh, God. Oh. But I absolutely love these movies. I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. I think he is outstanding. And can you imagine what he could do with a horror movie? Like, oh my God, that would be insane. So I can't wait to see what's next from Quentin Tarantino. I've loved every movie he's made. Well, there are a few I haven't seen, but, you know, Kill Bill, Pulp Fiction. I loved Inglourious Basterds. I thought that was a fantastic movie. So I can't wait to see what's next from Quentin Tarantino. And finally, rounding out this list is probably my favorite action movie series as well. For the longest time, this movie was my favorite movie. I thought the sequel, a lot of longtime fans really got down on the sequel, but I didn't find anything wrong with it. And of course, you've seen the posters, and if you know me well, you know I absolutely love this movie and this movie series. Of course, talking about the Boondock Saints. So yeah, like I said, I'm a huge fan of the Boondock Saints movies. You know, I've got the official Boondock Saints hoodie. It has the Brothers' Prayer on the back. And shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee. Power hath descended forth from thy hand, that our feet may swiftly carry out thy command. And we shall flow a river forth to thee, and he whose soul shalt ever be. In nomine Patri et Filii, Spiritus Sancti. And it was because of this movie that I actually went out and I bought a peacoat. Like, I saw one for $60 at Walmart, and when it dropped in price to about $20, that's when I bought it. But yes, I absolutely love these movies. It was, you know, I was watching, no, I wasn't watching, I was listening to an online radio broadcast, and the DJ kept mentioning this movie called The Boondock Saints, how great it was. Just this great action movie. So I was like, okay, I might have to check this out. And this is a time when video on demand services just started coming into effect. And we got this cable service and it had video on demand service. And one of the free movies on that was The Boondock Saints. So I'm like, okay, it's on here, I'm going to have to check it out. Checked it out. This was, oh my God, this was an amazing movie from start to finish that I've come to appreciate more as time goes on. Now, I will admit something. Yes, for the longest time, this was my favorite movie of all time. But I will admit, it's not a perfect movie. It's not. It's not. Well, it's acted very well. You know, you have a great cast: Sean Patrick Flannery, Norman Reedus, Billy Connolly, Willem Dafoe. Outstanding cast. But it's not. You know, there are some shots in there that aren't perfect, but it didn't need to be perfect. It was just a great action movie that told a pretty well crafted story. You have two twin brothers, Connor Murphy McManus, played by Sean Patrick Flannery and Norman Reedus. Norman Reedus, of course, from The Walking Dead, who are, you know, blue collar guys. You know, they like to go out with their friends and have a drink, and on St. Paddy's Day, they get into an altercation with a couple of Russian mobsters, which sets them on a course to where they feel they are on a mission from God, taking out all the evil, all the gangsters, all the pimps, all the murderers, and just wiping them out completely. And that carries over into the second movie. You know, speaking of the second movie, a lot of people give it a lot of flack, but I thought the second movie was really good. It wasn't as good as the first one, but it was still very much on par, and you had all the things that made the movie great in the first one. You had the humor, you had just the incredible action sequences. And, you know, I thought number two was a great movie, and it had a lot more emotion to it, too, because you had two main characters, you know, get the axe. But I love Boondock Saints movies. They are fantastic. They're just great movies to throw on and just go, wow, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, kill him, boom, 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 boom. And you had great characters in the first one with Rocco and the second one with Romeo, played by Clifton Collins Jr. Just fantastic actor. So yeah, definitely. These movies you should definitely watch if you're ever in an action mood. They will slate that for you. Alright, well, that is my list of 5 action movies you should watch before you die, or action franchises, whichever. If you enjoyed this, let me know with a thumbs up. What's your favorite action movie? Let me know in the comments section down below. Don't forget to share this video anywhere you can. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And if you're not already subscribed, don't forget to tap that bell and you will be notified whenever I upload anything new. Now, you may have noticed that in this list I did not include any Sylvester Stallone movies. Reason for that is because come back in 2 weeks and I will tell you about 5 Sylvester Stallone movies you should watch before you die. They are either movies he starred in or starred and directed or wrote. It's all up for grabs here. So come back in 2 weeks for 5 Sylvester Stallone movies you should watch before you die. Quick programming note, the season finale of Irish Bandit Revolution is coming up this coming Tuesday, and then Saturday and Sunday of next week, it is going to be days 1 and 2 of Saskatoon Expo. Get ready for that. Until then, I'm the Bandit, and I will see you again for another High Five.